let's begin the Realty Plus Woman Icon Conclave with the first industry talk of the day on the topic Framework for the Real Estate of the Future. So let me introduce our session, which will be chaired by Mr. Ramesh Nair, CEO, India and Managing Director, Market Development Asia Colliers, giving his introduction. With a diverse experience of over 23 years, Mr. Ramesh Nair's career has been focused on driving transformational change and delivering real estate solutions to domestic and multinational owners, investors, and occupiers across India and South Asia. At Colliers, Mr. Ramesh Nair is overseeing the overall direction, strategy, and growth of the India business. He also drives business development and key relationship management across APEC. So thanks, Mr. Ramesh Nair, for being here with us and chairing this session. Let me now introduce our speakers in an alphabetical order. I welcome Ms. Charu Thapar, Executive Director, Property and Asset Management, Asia Pacific, Head of Strategy, Platform and Emerging Markets, India, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Philippines for JLL. Ms. Charu Thapar has over 25 years of experience in real estate, of which 17 years is within the field of asset and property management. Charu mentors key emerging markets to provide delivery solutions to clients, promote technology, increase market presence in the PropTech space, and foster stronger partnership with clients. Charu also shepherds JLL's D&I initiatives and champions CSR for India. Ms. Charu, a very warm welcome to you. Our next very eminent speaker is Ms. Chulamas Jitpatima, also known as Amy, who is the Country Director, MQDC India. As India Director of MQDC India, which is Magnolia Quality Development Corporation, Ms. Amy has led the company's India entry, overseeing its strategic, operational, and marketing initiatives. Backed by more than 18 years' experience with large Thai conglomerates and multinationals, Amy has imparted a dynamic approach in launching the company in India. Our next very eminent speaker is Ms. Gitanjali Mirchandani, Managing Director and Country Head Origination, Loan Origination and Analysis at JM Financial Credit Solutions Limited. Ms. Gitanjali Mirchandani has over 15 years of experience in lending to the real estate sector. She has worked with ICICI Bank and Kotak Mahindra Bank in the real estate lending business and has been instrumental in setting up the real estate lending business in JM Financial. She is currently heading business development of the real estate NBFC at JM and has over the last decade built and managed a book of over $1.2 billion. Thanks, Ms. Gitanjali, for joining us today. Our next eminent speaker, I introduce Ms. Pushpa Bector, Executive Director, DLF Retail. Pushpa Bector, a veteran in retail, has been instrumental in shaping the Indian retail industry. Ms. Bector has 28 years of impressive track record of sustained growth, customer satisfaction, and innovation. In her current role, Ms. Bector is responsible for providing executive leadership and management to DLF Retail, which includes premium and luxury malls across marketing, leasing, finance, and operations. Ms. Bector, a very warm welcome to you. Our next eminent speaker, let me introduce Ms. Reeza Sebastian Karimpanal, President, Residential Business Embassy Group. Reeza Sebastian is a professional member of RICS. She has over 18 years of experience in the field of brand management, marketing, and sales, spanning diverse industries such as real estate, FMCG, and ITES. At Embassy, she oversees an ongoing portfolio valued at over $1 billion and is a key contributor to the group's strategies, operations, and decision-making. Our last and final speaker on this session is Ms. Sangeeta Prasad, Strategic Advisor and former MD and CEO, Mahindra Life Spaces Developers. Sangeeta Prasad is a business leader with deep expertise in conceptualizing, strategizing, and delivering industrial and urban ecosystems, commodities business, JV management, and thought leadership in sustainability. She has been a speaker at illustrious platforms like World Economic Forum Davos and COP21, the Paris Climate Conference. So this was our eminent panel that I introduced. I hand it over to our moderator, Mr. Ramesh Nair, to take over the conversation.
Thanks, Sapna, for the warm introductions. Good afternoon, friends. My name is Ramesh Nair, and I work with Colliers Asia. I'd like to thank Realty Plus for organizing this very relevant panel with some of our industry's most experienced women thought leaders many of them good friends. I welcome all of you to this unique interactive panel discussion for the inaugural edition of the Realty Plus Women Icon Conclave and Awards. The title for our panel today is Framework for the Real Estate of Future. It's my pleasure and privilege to be moderating this session. Like Satna introduced and welcomed our panelists, all of them very inspirational, high-performing women leaders and industry stalwarts in their respective domains. The subject is very timely. Our effort through these Realty Plus webinars is to provide you with very timely topics and very interesting speakers. Objective of this panel would be to get opinions from our thought leaders on the future of real estate. Charu, let me start with you first. Charu, what are some of the big changes you've seen in the evolution of property management since COVID started in the first wave, second wave? What are some of those big things you're seeing changes?
Good afternoon, everyone. And Ramesh, thanks a lot for having me on your panel. And I'm delighted with what Realty Plus is doing this time around. I think it's very inspiring. I was hearing the previous speaker also on diversity and inclusion. Great conversation there. So Ramesh, I will actually talk about three things which I have seen have had a massive impact. One, I think it is the on-calm of hybrid working. I think that has become a reality. A lot of people are going to want to and demand to work in flexi timings. The second thing is focus on health and well-being. It is a true focus. It's not just a tick in the box, which is a great segue to the second item, which I'll talk about is technology. I think we've seen a remarkable view towards technology. I think a lot of the assets had technology in bits and pieces. We are seeing a lot of aggregation happening. And I think integration is the name of the game right now. So all of that was put in the basket separately is being woven in. And I think the outcomes we are seeing are as various experience apps that buildings and users are wanting to use, be it malls, be it buildings, be it different spaces. I will talk about a third thing which has come to the forefront, Ramesh, and I think that is the active conversation around sustainability. We're seeing that impact not only in the buildings that we manage, but also the occupants. I think there's great scope for forming partnership frameworks. It is no longer just about having certifications like LEED and all of that. I think it is really about living a different life. I think this conversation has come to the forefront pretty actively since the pandemic. I think saving the earth, the climate change, all of that is having a direct impact on real estate and how we function and how we respond to it. I also think that is being driven by the younger generation. It is no longer a top-down approach. I think it is the people who are working in organizations are asking organizations to be more responsible when they're talking about their carbon commitments and their race to net zero. So to me, these three are quite transformative. I think they capture a lot under them, but these three aspects stand out for me.
Thanks, Charu. Amy, Charu just mentioned about the focus on health and well-being, and wellness. Wellness has never been as important as it is today. You hear it in almost all conversations. So how can we use technology to make wellness an integral part of the workplace?
All right. Hi, Ramesh. Hi, everyone there. And hi, Realty Plus. So that's a great question. You know, it's very interesting because if you think about it, when most people say well-being, right? Typically, in the past, we would think about the physical body mainly, right? But nowadays, we have to think about the physical body, the mind, and the emotional well-being of someone, right? So I'm sure all of you and all friends out there, you all heard of, improving air quality through filters, treated fresh air, the greens, the eco-friendly materials, But for our group, MQDC, our core philosophy is for all well-being of all living things, plants, people, animals, planets. So everything that we do in Thailand, for example, we have 2 dedicated research centers, and our partners globally like Harvard, MIT, and the people in Helsinki, for example, we discover that some upcoming trends that are becoming more and more important are things like circadian lighting, right? And circadian lighting is very important because all of us spend a lot of time indoors, whether it's at home or at the workplace. A third of our time is, working. So it's really important that you use the technology and the systems to design the proper lighting so that it's in tune and it's in line with your biological clock, so that you make sure that your hormones and everything internally are balanced. Because a lot of the times we don't know what's going on, right? And some things take effect sooner or later. So if there's an imbalance, it's going to affect not only the stress levels, but things like sleep disorders. 1 in 3 people these days have some kind of disorder, sleep disorder, and mental health. So mental health before, it's more like hush hush, right? But now it's a more common topic because it's a common thing that's happening, and the younger generations are more open about it, right? So you have wearables where you have data. Data is everything, right? So you understand yourself and the environment. We start to see meditation apps, music tune, sound therapy, music rooms to help people de-stress. So those are the things we foresee happening more in the workplace and at home, particularly as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Amy. Gitanjali, let me come to you with the next question. How have you seen the financing landscape change post-COVID? I see 2 very different scenarios. Globally, there's so much of capital, and in India, still a lot of developers are struggling for financing. What are some of those big changes you've seen post-COVID, or especially post the second wave?
Sure. Thank you, Ramesh. It's a very interesting question. I think we've all been grappling with the aftermath of 2 black swan events, which we have faced in the last 3 years now. I think we started off with the financial services crisis, which started with the INFS, followed almost immediately after a year and a half with COVID. What has very predominantly happened after both these events is that the main source of capital or debt, which was available for the sector for the longest period of time, for the last 6-7 years, was from the NBFCs, which was the non-banking finance companies. Unfortunately, after INFS, those companies themselves started facing a lot of issues from the liquidity perspective, whereby that financing became completely non-existent to the real estate sector. This only became extremely dominant and extremely highlighted even further after the COVID crisis, because that eventually started impacting asset qualities as well, which we are all witnessing even today. And I think that has eventually led to domestic players or players who have been wanting to lend or invest in this sector to have an extremely cautious approach. So I think the consolidation that is happening in the industry as a result of whatever has happened, there have been people who have been able to sell extremely well post-COVID, because the one change that has happened is that the fence sitters or people who really thought whether they need a residential home or not are really going out and buying. I think we have seen that in the residential space significantly post the first wave, when from September 20 to March 21, when most of the state governments give incentives to the buyers, a lot of people actually went and bought residential real estate properties. However, that happened mainly with trusted names, with good brands, with people who the consumer related to, who thought that, okay, my delivery and my house is not going to be a problem for me. Similarly, lenders today, we all are, as NBFCs today, whoever have survived the INFS crisis are all sitting on a significant amount of liquidity, all have access to a lot of capital. But I think that confidence that needs to come back into that sector will take some more time to come back. Today, we have a lot of money, but it's chasing a very few number of developers. A very few number of people have access to capital, have access to debt, which is sitting around with most NBFCs, banks, AIFs, or even private equity money, which is coming in. So I think this is it's a change after post-COVID, which you will see. You will have massive consolidation happening in this sector. You will have people who are extremely large becoming larger, who would continue to gain more market share. And there will be a niche. There will be a niche of people who have always been conservative, who have been debt averse, who believe in doing small projects, doing few projects at a time, what I can say focused on certain micro markets. Those people will continue to thrive as well. I feel there's that middle segment which we have lost forever, and I guess that they would never be able to come out of the problems which they have been post INFS and aggravated by COVID. So on a wholesale lending platform perspective, I think that's the major change which we will see going forward.
Thanks, Gitanjali. Pushpa, let me come to you. In urban India, malls serve not only as shopping destinations, but also from a recreation and entertainment point of view. How have you seen developers and retailers adapting to these enhanced experiential retail spaces?
Yeah, that's a nice question, Ramesh. Great to be in this forum. Well, what I can tell you is that, during COVID, first and second wave, the one chief entertainment space that has got highly impacted are the cinemas, because the disruption towards OTT is there. And we are seeing now that malls have reopened and so have cinemas. The occupancy is creeping up to around 10-12%. So I do think that from an entertainment point of view, PVR and all our partners have done tremendous amounts in terms of setting up more 14 filters, HEPA filters in a few places, etc. And we ourselves as DLF have now set up HEPA filters. We are in the process of doing that across our properties so that consumers feel that much more safe in an enclosed space when they're getting pure air. Having said that, I think it will take a while when it comes to touch and feel form of entertainment. For example, we have entertainment spots like Smash, etc. Now that requires gaming or any kind of children's entertainment is going to take a while. I would give it another 6 to 7 months before consumers get that confidence, in spite of all the good measures that the partners have taken. I know the sanitation procedures that we are undergoing at the mall level and at the tenant level is extremely high. But consumer confidence when it comes to children's entertainment will take another 6-7 months before the vaccination is full and finite for children. And that's the reality. And we need to recognize that reality as we see. On the other hand, retail and food and beverage is another story altogether. But to answer your question, this is going to take a while.
Thanks, Pushpa. Reeza, walk to work is gaining popularity. We keep hearing concepts like the 15-minute city in urban spaces. Is it realistic to create 15-minute cities in India? Can we have more of them? I've seen some examples like Magarpata city in Pune or Hiranandani Garden in Powai, Mumbai. But is there a more sustainable model for 15-minute cities?
Thank you, Ramesh, and thank you, Realty Plus. A very warm welcome to all my co-panelists and to the listeners of this webinar as well. I think I just wind it back a little bit, Ramesh, when I say that the concept of the 15-minute city, to educate the audience, these are complete neighborhood that states that all our basic needs should be met within a 15-minute walk or cycle from home. So this was first presented by the Franco-Colombian scientist Carlos Moreno, and which envisioned a much more decentralized city, which will change how we live, work, and socialize. And I think the reason why this has crept up today in our conversation is because this entire concept has gained so much momentum during the COVID-19 crisis, when residents were restricted to a very tight perimeter around their homes. And I was chatting with my sister the other day, she's in Melbourne. She says it's been 255 days they've been in lockdown, and they've not been able to move beyond a radius of 10 kilometers from their respective houses. So there's been a need for personal travel space, which has become much more premium, and walking and cycling has emerged as a vital forms of mobility for safe and efficient travel. The 15-minute city concept is also, I think, complementary to the transit-oriented development approach of creating vibrant communities, which can reduce driving by about 85%. And these will definitely offer a much stronger solution around problems of climate change by creating these walkable communities. The C40, which is a global alliance of the world's 96 cities, they've taken the oaths towards battle climate change. And interestingly, there are 5 Indian cities which have signed up as well. That's Bangalore, Chennai, Delhi, Jaipur, and Kolkata. The walled city of Jaipur is an outstanding example of this concept. I think it is developed around 294 years ago, where essential service and recreational facilities, along with workplaces, are accessible within 15 minutes of housing. So as a proverb goes, never waste a good crisis, and COVID has brought in restrictions that has provided developers with a ripe opportunity to rethink how we can reorganize our cities in a much more ecological and sustainable way. 40% of our population, or about 600 million Indians, are expected to live in urban centers by 2030. So we need to cater to this growing urban population, and hence the applicability of the 15-minute city concept starts gaining even more relevance. But I would say that this work from home concept will not be there for long, considering the fact that 70% majority of the Indian workforce is today employed in the non-tertiary sector. There is low digital penetration. And in the absence of a robust work from home policy, this percentage is not going to increase dramatically. Also, the fact that I don't see the government taking very, very strong initiatives around improvement of our cities. And in that case, the developers have stepped in to make the initiative and to create that difference. A trend that we have noticed with the pandemic is the emergence of very location agnostic buyers. There is a rising preference for well-planned integrated townships with accessibility to city centers, even if they're located in the suburbs. So people are aspiring for larger spaces, more green areas, better amenities, lesser crowds, cheaper rents, in self-sustained townships where you can combine, live, work, and play rather than standalone buildings. And I think we have fantastic examples in that, like Mahindra World City, Palava, Embassy Springs, which is in the making in Bangalore.
Thanks, Reeza. Sangeeta, I know you are the brainchild behind Mahindra World City, and Reeza just spoke about that. Today, there are so many, like Credai has 12,000 developers as members. But if you ask a customer how many developer brands do they trust, there is hardly, I think you can count it maybe in two hands, at least in the top 6 cities. So how can developers build trust in their brands? You worked with Mahindras, and it's even today it's known as one of the most trusted brands in the country. So what do you think about building trust with developers?
Thanks, Ramesh, for having me here, and love to see the lovely ladies out there. It really gives me hope about what the world and the future of real estate is going to be. And, we talked about trust, and thanks, Reeza, for plugging in Mahindra World City. Always a loyalist for that, because I've seen it nurture and grow. So coming back to trust, the last couple of years, especially the COVID times, has shown trust is out there. Trust is now not a opaque, translucent subject. It is transparent because of social media and access to technology. Nothing is good enough. And I would like to share here a hypothesis that the mega brands of today, and I'm just shifting from real estate to the other brands, especially in the domain of technology, The mega brands of today are not going unnecessarily the most trusted brands of today. So we in real estate have to realize if we have to become a community of trustworthy marketers, we need to realize that there's a word intertwined with trust, which is reputation. And where does reputation generate from, emanate from? It is from the mirror called customer. It is from the mirror called community. And the community has the mirror called investor also. So Gitanjali will quickly look at her list of clients to serve, and she will not only look at what they hear from the client, but she will go to these mirrors, which I've been talking about. So it's very first thing on trust, as I say, trust and reputation are synonymous, is one has to see how the leaders, its employees and its stakeholders around it are behaving in times of adversity. So how did the developers behave during the COVID period? Were they out there communicating? I remember, I was in Mahindra's during the first phase of COVID, and we were clear that we had to communicate bad news as well as good news. Communicate that we are not going to give you the house in time. Also communicate that we are doing it in the larger scope of goodness of community. Communicate to your vendors. So what I'm trying to say is, as the world gets more accessible to individuals and as megaliths get created, it doesn't mean that you have the bargaining power. Actually, you're losing the bargaining power because you're out there. So that's one. The second thing I think Charu in her early speech spoke about is the reimagined customer. So one is the community, the second is the customer. The customer is looking at sustainability, safety, health, care, convenience. And, it is very important while we use technology, and it's a caveat here because I was recently into an AI seminar. And what they said is, and I'll give you a very telling example. So the gentleman was talking, it's the CEO of Fractal Analytics. He was talking about AI in mobility. So he's saying, when a self-driver drives, he or she in the worst of times has an accident and impacts a few people around. And I'm not saying that's a good idea. I'm not supporting that. But when you transit into technology, you create an algorithm. And if the algorithm doesn't take care of the lowest common denominator of safety and quality, it can kill many people. So what I'm trying to say is, this pursuit of technology, which is very positive. So we need to, as developers, as we give access to our clients, we need to use technology which is safe to the lowest common denominator. So I will just conclude this part of my thing on trust. Trust is equal to reputation. It's out there. How do you behave in adversity? How do you use modern tools and technology to up the ante to serve your clients and customers and community? And never rest on your laurels, because the world is a competitive space. So these are a few things. Thanks.
Sangeeta, let me ask the next question also to you. The listed players have been doing quite well over the last 12 odd months, and they are expected to grow further. Stock markets have been handsomely rewarding the listed players. How do you think these listed players are looking at inorganic growth through JVs and consolidation?
I think the last 1.5 years again has shown that the listed players have also made themselves financially and operationally much more efficient. The way they have navigated the debt, the way they have served their clients. So each of them are rearing to go. And many of them are actually looking at various transaction structures. So at various levels, as we all know. So one is at a JV, mostly at a SPV level, then joint developments, as well as I think most listed developers are very aware and some are wary of how to handle joint partners, financial and strategic investors at the holding company level, because the whole game changes at the holding company level. Because you have a set of financiers where you are listed. So you have lots of stakeholders to whom you're accountable to. So I would say it is opportunistic. It is, while it is strategic, each developer has to be aware of what its antecedents are, what is its growth potential, and And I would exhort people, especially and I'm talking about the integrated city space, the industrial park space. It's always good to have a strategic investor also when you are doing a JV, because the best practices, especially in the industrial and the logistics space, are still nascent, and we are seeing that happening in India. People are going out and trying to work with strategic investors apart from financial investors. So those are the textures which I see in this space.
Thanks, Sankita. Reeza, I live in Mumbai, and I've seen the luxury residential market struggle over the last 6-7 years. I think since 2014, it's been a big struggle for the luxury market. But in the last few months, for the first time in so many years, we're seeing the luxury market do well. I hear this trend is there in many parts of India. Do you really see this trend here to stay? Do you see it continuing? What are your thoughts around that?
So Ramesh, you know that luxury housing is very close to my heart. I've been a major propagator of it for since I think the year 2011, when Embassy actually revamped its strategy towards focusing pretty exclusively on luxury for some time before we diversified back into mid-segment again. So what happened in the last 18 odd months is the fact that there's been a convergence of sort, right, between luxury real estate and quality of life. So that kind of took center stage, and people kept what is absolutely important to them at the time of the decision making. So there was health, there was safety, there was protection of their wealth and income. But of course, this was already catapulted by the fact that the interest rates for housing loans were at a historic low of 6.75%, and the fact that the stamp duty registration came down, which is also the reason why we saw a big pickup in Bombay's luxury real estate market. But why do I believe that luxury housing will remain a relevant story for a long time? I would say one is the fact that the aspiration of the young population has changed quite a bit. So the savvy millennials who previously preferred renting properties over buying have now adjusted their perceptions with a focus on acquisition. So this was one of the reasons why I believe that luxury housing took center stage. Also, the fact that there's been a changing way of life. So working from home was a potential new constant. So it required and raised the demand for larger homes that incorporated workspaces. People wanted additional facilities, gyms, they wanted yoga rooms, home theaters to make them fully self-sufficient units. There was also, from a nuclear family setup, we saw that for the fact that they wanted to take care of their parents, a rise in joint family living. So this was another reason why I felt that there was a need for larger homes, and the entire concept of the home itself has been altered forever, right? There's also been a requirement for better security, well-managed residences, the fact that hygiene measures, spatial planning, have all those been considered when I buy a home. Apart from that, from a customer perspective, who we are seeing definitely who buy these kind of homes are top level execs, business class, NRIs, HNIs, and they have not really been affected by external factors. So whoever wanted to improve on their quality of life, who wanted to move into a gated community where you're living with like-minded individuals, were also the reason why we saw an uptick in luxury housing. The other fact definitely is the demand-supply gap, right? So there is a demand and supply is becoming very scant, so to speak. People are not really doing luxury projects at this stage. So that because of the gap, I would believe that there would continuously be a demand on quality luxury housing even in the years to come.
Thank you, Reeza. Pushpa, how has investor and retailer sentiments changed? India, the top 6 cities in India constantly have this problem of not too much of supply coming in. If one mall comes up in a city every year, that itself looks like a big number. So have you seen, and also one more question. Last year, around April, May, there was so much of confusion. There was such a standoff between retailers and mall owners. This time when the second wave happened, didn't hear much about too many challenges. So just if you could throw some light around both those issues.
Yeah, interesting question. So I'll answer the second one first. Actually, when we were dealing with the crisis the first time around, which was after the first wave, both developers and retailers were tackling with what I would call an unknown sphere. No one knew how the consumers were going to react. And one saw online picking up and how, the growth of online in those 5 months was unprecedented. They got a growth which they had envisaged over the next 5 years and 5 months. When they opened, when we opened the malls, our focus clearly was to get the consumer sentiment right. So the way we did in DLF is that we wanted to have a win-win model with the retailers, whom we consider as our long-term partners. And we created a program which went along with the season and the seasonality and consumer confidence coming back. It worked very well. And in fact, there was no friction even last year where we, as DLF as a group is concerned, because we gave some kind of a proposal which was transparent, well thought through, and something which was win-win for both. So we kind of took the hit, took a leadership position. Come this year, we realized that the consumers can come right back. And by the time it was February and March, our sales had hit 95% of previous levels. Luxury had hit 120% of previous levels. So we knew how the consumers were going to be reacting. Consumers had also started preferring our portfolio properties because they saw the initiatives we had taken in terms of, safety and hygiene and a lot of contactless processes we had started using technology. So with that, we were pretty confident that this time around, we should really just tackle that finite period of the lockdown and we'll be coming back to business as usual. We did think that the month of June would take a little bit of time and after that it should be business as usual. And we were actually proven right. And we have come back to our contractual billing and we've really not seen people coming back and asking us for anything because the business has come back. And the business is today in a situation where in the month of August, just in 2 months' time, we had at a portfolio level, we are almost at 80 to 90% of previous year's sales, and consumers have shown the trust. Their online and offline balance is now setting back in place. We saw, interestingly, what's happening with the US markets too. Last year, the US went completely online, and as the lockdown opened with the second wave, offline has taken over, even in the US markets, and we are seeing the same behavior repeat itself in Europe and now in Asia. So we think that this, hopefully this season is going to be one of the best that we see. And luxury market especially has behaved extremely well because there is no international travel. And earlier it used to happen that, consumers would go overseas and buy most of their favorite luxury brands overseas. Now with this whole change in restriction and travel, they're experiencing luxury domestically and they're kind of quite pleasantly surprised to see that the pricing is in sync, the trends are in sync. And so the trust is coming back when it comes to luxury shopping also. Few categories, yes, there could be issues because events are even today all over the country, as you can see, few and far between. So to answer your first question in terms of investor and retailer confidence today has, I can clearly divide it into two. One is the larger brands have got stronger in the past 18 months. Be it in premium or luxury or any of the spaces, the larger brands have certainly become, they've consolidated their business. All brands and all developers, I would say, have become more efficient, cost efficient, because that was the important call of the day. And I think cost efficiencies was the main focus in globally, for the past year. And that has proven good dividends. Now that, the consumer confidence is coming back, the profitability is on the rise. And that to me is an important aspect in terms of retailer confidence. Now, when it comes to the smaller retailers, one of the panelists here talked about the middle level getting impacted, and I couldn't agree more, because what's happened is in this pandemic, the larger brands have got stronger. The smaller homegrown brands have taken a huge space in the consumer mind because they came up with sustainable products, etc. And they were also nimble-footed in terms of reactions to the consumer needs. The middle people, the brands which are mid-level, what they, at that point, if they are over-leveraged vis-a-vis debt, or they have been on an expansion spree, they found themselves in a bit of a sticky spot. And we did think that there would be a fallout of around 4 to 5% of brands. And unfortunately, that's the truth. As we are going into the season now, we do know that there'll be few brands which would not really survive due to the pandemic. When it comes to investor confidence, last year was a whole different ballgame because, as you know, in the portfolio of retail and offices, the entire gamut, offices still paid their rentals, the collections was ongoing. However, because of the long lockdown, things started getting disturbed when it comes to, this financial year. However, when it comes to retail, the retail has seen a pretty tough year last year. We had seen all over, all my colleagues in the retail space had seen a similar situation. But this year we are seeing that things are looking better. So from an investor point of view also, an interesting bit is that when we are discussing, say, a REIT, a mixed REIT will be a better idea. It may not be a good idea to have just a REIT for offices and just a REIT for retail, because a blend of the two seems to be the one which will actually give us a multiplier impact. And also that holds us in good stead when it comes to crisis, because both react very differently, but as a balanced portfolio, it makes a lot of sense.
Pushpa, talking about REITs, are there new regulations required for a retail REIT, or with the current regulations for office, you could easily do a retail REIT also?
Yes, I don't think there is any additional requirements because eventually it is about,
income producing.
It's really about rental assets which are regular in nature. And I can only say this, that as far as retail is concerned, we do see spikes, and hence the upside that one gets is something that will be an interesting balance between offices. Offices is steady, whereas in retail, you do see and you do realize that upside, which would be interesting when it comes to having a balanced rate.
So if you look at the April 1st to March 31st financial year, if office, I've read reports that DLF managed to collect 97-98% of the office rentals. How much was it for the malls?
Well, for the malls, as I told you, our billing, we started the billing process only the month of June and July. And so I can tell you in the month of August, we have surpassed the billing collections of that particular month. Now the focus is really on recovering past dues. And so we concluded last year with as much collections that we could, in the sense that our closing balance of 1920 was equal to the closing balance of 2021. And we believe that that will be the same case going forward too, because the consumers are back, sales is good and robust. We are coming into season, so the past dues shall also be recovered. So
got it, Pushpa.
Pretty good space.
Thank you. Gitanjali, has the industry really become accountable with the bankruptcy code and RERA? And there is mixed things which you hear from different states. It's at least on the RERA front. Is RERA really toothless? You hear things like that. Bankruptcy code again, the laws were great, but even today, many of those well-known bankruptcies which get covered in the papers, you still don't see effective resolution. So has the industry become more accountable?
So the answer to that question in one word is yes. I think they have become definitely more accountable. If you look at the past 1 decade to where we started when I started looking at the sector at 15 years ago, to where we started to where we are today, I think the accountability ratios are completely different, right? You have a lot of systems, checks and balances in place. And when I say that, this accountability is not only to the end customer, because today your customer is far more educated than your customer was 15 years ago or even a decade ago. There is so much more transparency. There is so much more data available to a customer today, from ICs, from who have publicly been publishing reports about what the demand supply situation is like, what the correct pricing should be. There is so much access on RERA website about legal challenges that a project has. So I think a consumer is a more informed consumer, and there is no other way for a developer to go than to be accountable to the consumer. Now, coming to, so RERA, for all practical purposes right now, I'll focus on MAHA-RERA because I think that has pretty much been, the most, the most comprehensive RERA, and I think most people are following suit. So I think from a consumer resolution perspective, I think there have been some brilliant orders in the last 4-5 years, which have set course in terms of what a consumer can expect in case of a delay of a project, in case of misrepresentations. I think they're also very accessible and very available to resolve problems. And I think, and they have been pretty fair in terms of also understanding the developer's perspective because of COVID, etc. So I think RERA has been a good change. I think there's a lot that is still required to be done on that space. However, I think what has been done is a welcome change and is a step in the right direction. When it comes to IBC, and from a lender's perspective, I think it is a good other source of enforcement for lenders. Okay, for the longest time, we had our mortgage suits, which used to take years to enforce. So the first thing was, if the developer has a niyat to pay you back, like Sangeeta rightly said, that you go back to your notes and say, how did he behave when there was a crisis earlier, and how he is going to behave going forward in a crisis. But in a crisis like we are seeing today, okay, even if there is the niyat, as they call it, to pay, there may not be a wherewithal to pay. So how do you get access? So I think most real estate lenders have found it easier to enforce surfacing because you have hard security here. And hence it has been easier to actually go enforce the security which you have. And given that real estate will always have a price, will always sell at a price, which is a general notion that we all go ahead with. We believe that has been a better way of enforcing security here. But there have been a lot of other instances where I think developers have realized that even if one project is not doing well, a lender can actually disrupt the actual functioning of the whole company, right? So in that way, they are very accountable. And not only lenders, your unsecured lenders, your operational creditors, we have had situations where they can take you to IBC for very small amounts. So I think overall, it's been a big learning for us as well, because we have started becoming, in certain cases, we have started interacting with consumers ourselves or buyers, right? Where there has been some amount of delays, we've had to interact with each stakeholder. So the developer clearly has to be more accountable, and there is no other way for the developer. So I feel these are all steps in the right direction. A lot is, yes, still sought for, and I think it will evolve as we go ahead. But yeah, this is necessary, and I think we are doing a great job of trying to ensure that the developer knows that what are the repercussions if at all of these things don't go as per plan.
Great, thanks, Gitanjali. Amy, what are some of the big design changes you've seen since COVID started?
Yeah, so when you talk about design changes, I think the most obvious ones, if you look at the workplace or restaurants, cafes, social spaces, it's more social distancing, more space, more private space for each person. But one thing that as a property developer that we'd like to see going into the future, and we believe that it would benefit whether it's COVID or no COVID, is more open spaces, right? More green open spaces. And that's because, and we all know as a property developer, every project that we do, we impact the environment and the community at large. So we hope to see more open spaces, whether it's within the project, any kind of asset classes, or spaces that spill over into the public areas. So you can imagine, like when you have setbacks and the sort, you can design the space somewhere where we have nice landscaping, social hangout, nice pedestrian crossing, and larger sidewalks. So when you do these open spaces, whether it's within the project, on the terrace, on the rooftop, and the gardens, or even in the public spaces, what it does for the whole community is it encourages connectivity, mobility, active lifestyle, right? And in the long term, this is something that benefits all our health, right? And another thing that we hope to see is, since people learn that with COVID, people have to stay home more, as some of you, my friends here, were saying, you have to design the environment of your project, especially if it's the workplace or residences, that it's convenient for them as a social hangout space if they can't go somewhere. So how do you design a place that's comfortable, that's good for the environment and good for the community? So I would say that, as developers, you have to also invest, dare to invest in certain kinds of technology. For example, back home in Thailand, our biggest project to date, it's called the Forestiers. It's 200 acres on the outskirts of Bangkok. So we invest in a system like CUP, right? Central utility plant and district cooling systems and all this. So it doesn't give off heat. So people can enjoy the forest, can enjoy the outdoors as much as the indoors, right? And I think that's one key component that we hope to see, whether it's in India, in Thailand, or elsewhere that we're operating at, with or without COVID.
Thanks, Amy. Charu, let me come to the last question to you, given that we are running out of time. Charu, what are some of those learnings from other markets in Asia, especially for India? I know you play a role within JLL for Asia. So what are some of those learnings?
Thanks again, Ramesh. Great question. And I'm going to almost continue from what Amy just said. I think we have to definitely view technology as a platform and not just as a gimmicky tool. I feel that we still believe, and I've seen this, a lot of developers, building owners believe that they can build some app because it's cheaper. In India, you get a lot of app developers who are at a dime a dozen, but actually it's a platform, right? There are people who are working day and night to build these platforms and deliver a service. It's like, using an Apple phone. Every time there's an upgrade, it comes to you, correct? Similarly, that's how the technology platform works. The platform integrates the services you want to deliver as an experience to your end user. It also integrates to the people who are delivering that service to you. So it has to do both things, right? Actually, three things: the end user, the built space itself, and the people who are managing it. It has to do all three functions. And for us, I see a lot, many times it is like, oh, I have an app. And actually, if you go deep, what does it do? It barely does anything. Perhaps it allows you entry into a building, and that's where it ends. Or perhaps it gives you some other allowances. Whereas actually an integrated app does much more. It will actually show you what your indoor air quality is, where you are. You want to move away from there, go to a better place. It'll give you your lux level. What is your circadian lighting? I think someone mentioned that earlier on, right? It tells you what is happening in the building, brings in the community element. It tells you what health and well-being programs are being run by the building or by the infrastructure, brings communities together. So I think technology has to definitely be viewed as a platform and not just something that is cheaply available. So it comes to the investment part. The developer or the community has to invest in building that. The second element I would say, Ramesh, and I think I mentioned it earlier, we all know the built environment contributes to 40% of carbon emissions, right? And a lot of buildings are targeting, or developers are targeting, to be net neutral by 2050. Actually, if we don't do it, and if we don't get serious about it, right, in terms of taking accountability and ownership, we will lose out as assets, because all the occupants are going to demand that. And I'm sure you are seeing green leases, occupants wanting to have partnership frameworks and agreements in terms of delivering that, because their goals are also reliant on your goals, right? The spaces that they occupy. So to my mind, I see these two as very transformative differences in terms of seriousness. I'm not saying we don't do it. I just think some of them are superficial, and we just need to get a little bit more serious about these two aspects.
Thanks, Charu. I'll have an open question. Whoever wants to take it can take it. Diversity ratios, we've been talking about it in Indian corporates for a very long time. Still, it's been a struggle. I know Charu and me, we would be evaluated every quarter in terms of how we could increase diversity ratios, especially in the real estate industry. It's been tough, given that a lot of jobs are site-based. Many times, even clients say, okay, we don't want women at these sites, given that we have a lot of outsourcing business. Any high-level ideas in terms of how we could improve diversity ratios in the real estate corporate world? Anyone wants to go? Yeah, Pushpa?
So I think it's nice to see so many people wanting to take this question. But what I'd like to tell you is that, when I joined DLF and I was not from the real estate space, and I noticed it was highly skewed as compared to many other industries that I had worked earlier. And one wondered why, and you're rightly saying, will a woman be comfortable in a construction site? Will a woman be, will the men sort of taken the orders from, let's say women talking about construction or mall development or whatever it be? I'll tell you this, that I think things have changed drastically over the years. We in DLF very consciously within the retail space, today we are at a ratio of 25%, which is far, far, far higher than what it used to be earlier from the retail point of view. But I don't think we should stop there. I think the real issue is that women joining the workforce and doing so-called male-oriented jobs is one aspect. The other is, what do we do to make them sort of create successes for themselves? How do we help them grow? And there I agree with some of the panelists that the hybrid culture that is coming now to play is going to play a major role in this aspect. What will tend to happen is those women who would drop off the workforce when they are young mothers, or when they are, there are those situations that they get into, those numbers hopefully will reduce. And going forward, I think it's very important at an HR and a macro level to understand how we can be agnostic to jobs being categorized as male jobs and female jobs. Instead, just look at skill sets, and the skill sets get the main precedence over gender. I think that's the key in the whole thing. The second aspect I would say is that safety is as important to a woman as to a man, So I think it's also important that even if it's a blended role, we have to provide safe environment to both genders. And that's increasingly clear when you're sitting in these committees. You see that, it's a society which is in flux, and hence one needs to look at it in a very holistic manner and not really treat in a compartmentalized fashion. So to me, the high level thing would be, HR has to not look at jobs as gender oriented, more as skill oriented. The second is provide an equal platform for people to grow. I think where women really suffer is that when it comes to decision-making roles, by the time they hit that bit of trying to get into decision-making roles, they may have to work a lot harder than the male counterpart. But that also should improve as the time goes by. Even this aspect should improve, and more women should really break the glass ceiling. And it's lovely to see so many MDs and EDs here. It just shows that, over here, the glass ceiling is starting to break. And, I think times are changing.
Very nicely said, Pushpa. Charu, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, so Ramesh, I think I want to make 2 points. One, I think we realized that entry barriers have almost been broken down. We almost see when we are recruiting maybe 45, 60, 55% ratio men is to women, or some cases even 50-50. It is at that mid-career level when they start dropping out. I think there's a two-pronged approach that we need to have. It can't be a one-way street. The entire ownership cannot rest definitely with only the company or the regulation. It also has to be partnered by the female employee themselves, right? We have to ensure by counseling, by buddying, to give them the confidence to have a voice. They need to talk about the challenges they're facing to stay in the workforce. See, because we can have, like the government has a great protocol, maternity leave 6 months. A lot of people don't want to hire women at that age because they feel they'll have to give 6 months maternity benefit, right? So that pettiness has to go away from the employer's side, but from the women's side, equal participation, confidence, and asking for your rights has to come. It cannot be achieved just by one side of the fence and the other side not wanting to jump. I firmly believe that both are partners in this.
Sangeeta, you want to?
I just wanted to add a few things here. So one is the aspect of the debiasing. I'll give a quick example. Amazon, when they were getting into their hiring process into a technology mode, they realized when they were looking at their manual algorithm that willy-nilly, unconsciously, people were not even interviewing people from women's colleges. So what I'm trying to say, and I think the HR system there, whether men or women, were not even conscious about it. It was a subconscious thing. Like, someone said that, you only said that clients don't want women in at site. So what happens, these embedded biases get ingrained in people and they don't even realize it. So the first step is, how are we debiasing? And I would exhort all of you here out there, look at your processes and don't look at processes on paper. Look at what's happening. Be part of the HR's programs. Almost have a CCTV camera at the cost of sounding inclusive in today's days. We have to be careful what we do and we don't do. But it's very important to do that. The second, Charu spoke about a two-way traffic. While I agree with you here, Charu, maybe some of us have been, we have gone and exhorted, called out. But I have realized that people are not, and if there's no network effect in a cohort of 20 people, if there's only one woman, not everyone is a Charu Thapar. So what happens in these kind of situations is people tell us, Sangeeta, you are special. And sometimes we fall into that trap. Call out and say, we are not special, we are common. We are as common as you are. And that is where I would suggest that leaders like all of us have to go out there, tell our girls what is their right and what is their duty, of course, not to take it as an alibi. I totally agree with you, Charu, there. And for the organizations to play affirmative action, days of osmosis, days of, passive action is over. Yes, if required, quotas, and people talking about getting women on merit, come off it, yeah. Even men, there are many men who are not meritorious and out there. So, when such subsets are used by women like us also, we should just bite our tongue and stop it. So these are some of the things: affirmative action, sensitization, and having a deep reflection of the so-called HR policies and processes.
And
Very nice, Sangeeta. Sapna?
Just to add to that, I don't think today real estate careers is not just about being on sites. I think there are so many options within real estate, right? You can be in research, you can be in property management, you can be in audit, you can be in finance. I mean, the options are plenty. So I don't think women should not be restricted thinking that real estate career is about being on sites.
But it could be on site also. We should be open to that.
Yes, of course. But it cannot be that's not the only job on hand, right?
Very true. Sapna, do we have time? Or
we'll take some questions. We have some audience questions here. But in fact, talking about gender and diversity, all of our speakers had been talking about. Let me say, we have moderator for both the panels in this conclave as the male professionals, because we wanted to have gender diversity on the panel. So that was this was by design. But let's go on to the questions. Some very interesting questions. One question is is which segment of housing has the most customer demand currently? So probably Reeza and for Ms. Sangeeta.
Yes, as my friend Reeza would like to believe that the luxury state segment is the most lucrative segment, and obviously so, and it has a demand. But I think demand is a symptom of what is the country about. So a country is about a certain level of people, certain socioeconomic class, and I believe that that is the segment, the burgeoning middle and the young generation who are coming up and want flexibility in homes, want to invest in places which are of a certain category and certain segment. So I would give my vote for the affordable housing segment, and don't treat affordable housing segment like a nano, because customers, whoever is buying a home, is buying it as a most precious asset in their lives, a precious acquisition in their lives. So what I would say, that's the segment which is of higher demand. Look at your cost, look at your technology, look at your design homes which are welcoming, which give the customer pride and happiness as they come in. So that's my vote.
Reeza.
So I would agree with Sangeeta. I mean, definitely from a volume perspective, it's definitely affordable housing. Luxury housing is still very niche, but we're also talking of higher margins in luxury. So that's from a developer standpoint, right? And also the fact that I think residential real estate is becoming more and more specialized. As we go along, I think, even apart from affordable housing, even aspects like, or asset classes like co-living, senior living, etc., are also taking center stage. And this has been hastened by the pandemic. So there are different asset classes within residential, apart from affordable housing, which is also gaining importance.
Okay, so from consumers' perspective, the affordable and mid segment is what is in huge demand, and from developers, luxury makes more sense for the margins. Another question is about the challenges and opportunities for investors in distressed projects. Gitanjali, this is for you. Do investors have distressed projects? Is there a potential for them?
So yes, there has been massive scope for the distressed investor. I mean, investors looking at investing. So you've seen a lot of distressed funds, which is a more organized way of investing in distressed assets come up. I think this is today, the way the market is, there is opportunity to invest in real estate, period. I think it's a very good time to invest in real estate at this point in time. Unfortunately, most of us are marred by what has happened to us in the last 3-4 years. And that's why we're not able to take that call. But today, anybody who wants to allocate resources as an individual investor or as a structured institutional investor, I think there is a lot of opportunity in the residential real estate space. I think we have kind of bottomed out as far as the pricing is concerned, as far as the demand supply situation is concerned. Last 4-5 years, most of the developers haven't really gone out and acquired real lands, and hence the supply has been limited. You're seeing more and more people go out and acquire assets because they realize that in a couple of years, they won't have anything more to do, right? So you will see the supply and demand gap narrowing, right? And you will obviously see a lot of people not being able to keep up with the way the industry is changing, which is where the distress opportunity comes into play. Right today, there are a lot of institutions who are sitting on loans or assets which need solutions. You have the Swami Fund who comes with one kind of solution, which is also in a way a distress asset fund. So there are huge amount of opportunities in residential real estate if someone has the appetite and the ability to wait through, because I think this is the beginning of the next cycle as far as residential real estate is concerned.
Okay, so once you have the capabilities, yes, there is a great potential looking at distressed projects for the investors. Another one is about commercial real estate. Now, Amy, it is for you. Do you see enterprise clients taking up flexi workspace more now?
Yes, actually. So because of COVID, we've actually seen a trend where enterprise clients are using more like satellite offices more, so that, more like a hub and spoke kind of format for their various corporate staffs, so they don't have to travel too much. So, what we see is before, enterprise clients might be needing more numbers of seats, like 50, 100s, over 100s, right? But now actually they're willing to explore more flexible formats and also flexible lease terms, so that, they don't have to put in the CapEx, as well as they care about the well-being and the happiness of their corporate staff. So that's a good trend we see for ourselves as well.
Okay, so good for flexi workspaces. Another one, Charu, that is for you. Now, as you said, tenants want more from commercial real estate. Similarly, though investors' confidence is quite high in commercial real estate that we have seen in last 1.5 years also, despite COVID. But what do the developers need to do more about commercial real estate, in terms of their offering?
Thanks, Sapna, for the question. Very relevant. I think I addressed to one. I think definitely upgrade in the facilities, in the technology that is being offered. And second comes back to sustainability. I understand most of the international developers have that as a big tick in the box now before they invest in any kind of asset. So unless we are able to upgrade and meet the demands and partner their net zero goals, assets are going to lose out. So I think those two things are really important.
Okay, so spaces need to be technologically well equipped and sustainable. Yes, human wellness and human-centric spaces now are the buzzword in real estate and for everyone. Pushpa, Bector, this is for you. There is a recent report that predicts Indian cities will add about 100 new malls by 2022. So what is the reason for such bullish sentiments according to you?
Well, I think, as they say, behind every crisis, there is an opportunity. So what really happened was there was a lot of talk between online retail, everything shifting online. Is offline going to be not relevant anymore? I think that particular debate is to rest. The retail asset class during this crisis behaved in a way, both from a retailer point of view, brand point of view, a developer point of view, and a consumer point of view. Sentiments came right back. With that, it was very clear that there are many different kinds of retail assets that is going to take shape. For example, if the embassy group has got, they were talking about creating residential complexes which has got all the facilities within. So today you have an opportunity where the retail asset class is going to be present in residential communities. It's going to be present in good size in residential communities, in the office spaces, as well as in, as standalone retail. So instead of having a typeset cookie cutter model, retailers have also, and developers have come up with different kinds of models, not just mixed use, and different kinds of mixed use. With that, what's happened is the thinking has changed. And hence the number of, I wouldn't call them all malls. We ourselves are developing a few which are plazas, not malls, but that's necessary for the residential community, which is surrounding that particular retail asset class. So with this, I think there is confidence, and people are also thinking out of the box, and that's also propelling investor confidence because the naysayers have been sort of put to rest at this point.
Right. So the models will change. We might see new models coming up. In fact, I just read on one of the developers board, Resi Retail Township. So that's a new term probably which has come in.
Absolutely.
So that's not, Mr. Ramesh, now coming to you. We are talking about future of real estate. So how is your outlook? Summing it up. What is your outlook?
The outlook, it's great to see residential kind of come back to really good highs, the best residential phase over the last 6-7 years. Commercial, I feel there will be a little more struggle even for the next 12 months, although last quarter was good because a lot of decision making and a lot of pent up demand from the previous quarter got finalized in the last quarter. Retail would take again some time to pick up. Again, it's going to be a more consolidated industry. Like Pushpa said, the big will get bigger. Industrial and warehousing as a sector is doing extremely well. We will see the market breaking records next year, especially driven by e-commerce and 3PLs. Also new asset classes like data centers, co-living, all that very early days because the size of these asset classes are reasonably small. So I think good times for residential and industrial.
Okay, thank you. Fantastic. I think that summed up the entire session for us. Thank you all our speakers for sharing your views. I think our audience had very valuable takeaways from the conversation today that we had. So thank you so much for your time and for being here and sharing your views and opinions. Thank you so much. Thanks, Charu. Thanks, Ms.
Thank you
Gitanjali.
all.
Thanks
so much.
Pushpa.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mr. Nair, for that wonderful
you.
moderation. Ms.
Thank you.
Sangeeta Prasad. Thanks, Reeza, and thanks, Amy, for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Sapna.
much.
Thank you.